Hello and welcome to Season 5 of the SoundStage Audiophile Podcast. For the past few years, we've been digging deep into the history of hi-fi, as well as how geopolitics and socioeconomic forces are shaping its present realities. This season, we'll also start to look at hi-fi and audiophilia with an eye toward the future. What's this hobby going to look like as demographics shift? What can we do to bring in new enthusiasts? How will the gear and the hobby itself evolve in the coming decades? To discuss the possibilities, here's host Jorden Guth and this week's guest.
Hello and welcome to the SoundStage Audiophile Podcast. Today we have Étienne Gautier back with us, the Chief Commercial Officer of Moon by Simaudio. And we're excited to have you. Welcome back.
Hey, hi guys, and thank you for having me again.
Yeah, for those who don't know or maybe haven't heard previous episodes, Étienne has been on a few times. So we'll leave links in the show notes to kind of some different episodes that give Étienne's origin story and some really interesting stuff from both product launches and kind of the history of Moon and Étienne. So you can always refer back to that. Today, we are into Season 5 of the Audiophile Podcast, and we thought that you'd be a great person to kind of talk to about our overarching topic of this season. And that topic is what's next for hi-fi? What is next for the industry, the consumers, the hobby of hi-fi in general? And you have some really great insights. You guys do an excellent job with Moon and Simaudio. We wanted to kind of poke you, get your insights, and kind of talk shop a little bit with you.
Yeah, thank you. It's always a pleasure. Already Season 5. Time flies. But it's great. I always, like to share, our thinking at Simaudio, but also, my personal point of views. I think also that this kind of conversation and the fact that you get many guests from, all around the world, very different companies, like the last conversation you had with T+A was really great.
Conradine?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really good because we have at the same time very different point of views on certain subjects, but at the same time we join on others, and this is really good because it makes the industry moving forward, or opening our eyes on different subjects, stuff that we didn't think about, and I think it's really, really interesting, and that relates I think on the very vast and big subject that you're raising for that Season 5, which is future of hi-fi. Because I think one of the main point for the future of our hobby and industry will be how do we organize ourselves as an industry and in between manufacturers. I have other passions in life. I'm really, fond of hi-fi and music, but I also like, to ride my bike. I also like watches, and I'm pretty sure like many other people in the industry and many of hobbyists that like hi-fi. And those industries, watches, and they have structured themselves. They have organized themselves. And I think this is one of the major things we need to do in the future. We need to organize ourselves for multiple reasons. First of all, we need to have a common message and a common, perspective on what should be the hi-fi industry. Also, we need to be in the possibility of keeping certain standards of quality, professionalism, customer support, customer service. And we need, I think, to continue to offer the best for our music enthusiasts, we need to organize that, and we need to set up standards. And to be able to set up standards within the industry, we need to organize that industry. The manufacturers, the show organizers, the journalists need to be all around the table to set up standards. So I think this is something that could be very important for the future of hi-fi, setting up standards and sticking to it. And also in terms of organizing ourselves, it implies certain regulations as well. In terms of security, for example, obviously each part of the world has its own regulations.
Yeah.
But we could set up standards for our own industry, or performance standards that we would like to see becoming the rule in our industry. For example, the watch industry, again, they have the Geneva stamp that they put on certain movements that guarantees a certain accuracy, which is a standard in the industry and recognized like a label, to qualify and to certify to the consumer that his watch is reaching a certain level of precision. We could have that, in the hi-fi industry, because, everything we do is measurable. So, we could say that to be qualified as a hi-fi gear, you need to be at such level of distortion, or, something like this. Why not?
And then I guess the question there is like, so I think your main point here, and correct me if I'm wrong or missing it, but like the more information to the consumer, the better. But when they essentially get like a fire hose of information, then you get this issue where what is accurate, what is wrong? How do you compare apples to oranges between different manufacturers, what they think is valuable in like measurements or kind of different tests or stuff like that. So I guess, and maybe we should mention that like Moon by Simaudio, for those who don't know or whatever, you're primarily looking at the electronic sides of things. Like you guys dabble in speakers a little bit, but it's primarily electronics.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about standards, would you be talking about things like obviously rated output, but based on a specific, like the whole the difference between 8 ohms versus 4 ohms and stuff like that? So standardizing how those measurements appear and what those are, or what other kind of standards, or what things are you thinking about?
Yeah, exactly. We can start with very basic things like this, obviously, like, everybody is standardizing the way they present the information, so that, it's clear for the consumer, and then they make their own choices. Also, we could have some other references, for the consumer to refer to, some kind of a, I don't know, charts that we comply to, saying that, obviously we use, as a manufacturer of electronics, we use some kind of components that we, commit to recycle in a certain way, or we are committing to, have some practices of, environmentally friendly practices that, is a standard in many industries. We I think as a high-end industry, we need to provide more as a standardization practices.
Yeah. And I think this is fascinating because one, I haven't really kind of heard this angle on things before. And two, when I consider some of the other industries out there, like I think it's Floyd Toole, I could be wrong, it could be Sean Olive, it might be Floyd Toole, that was saying there is more information on the side of a tire than in most kind of sales brochures for speakers. And I'm going to take that and steal it and basically use it for electronics. It's the exact same. A lot of companies don't necessarily want to advertise all the different things, or maybe they advertise things that they don't necessarily, that other companies might not. So I think that's a fascinating idea for kind of standardizing. And then you think about like even like Apple's approach to things, the MFI program, so made for iPhone, or even Spotify or any of these providers, like they have minimum specs that you need to meet in order to say that you are Title Connect certified or whatever it may be. So bringing that to the industry as a whole, at least for the consumer point of view, you don't necessarily need to know the depth of all of these different things. If you look and say, okay, well, this is actually meeting the bare minimum so that we know that it's of a certain quality, then it becomes a matter of other choices.
Absolutely. And my goal here, because, obviously Simaudio is a company of a certain size now. We have developed over the years, and in our industry, we have multiple companies from various sizes. And, I don't want my speech here to be interpreted as I'm trying to remove all the small manufacturers. This is not the point. The point is we are a high-end industry, so let's getting better together, all together. So we just need to at some point decide, where it goes, and if some people doesn't want to comply to eventually what we would decide, then they can do their things on their own on the side. But if enough manufacturers are getting all together and saying that, okay, now we'll standardize that, and it's just better for the consumer, and then they choose with their heart, with their passion, and with their set of features they want from their hi-fi system, then it's their own choice, but at least they have a common ground of information that it's easy to rely on, and where everybody committed to make sure that it's accurate and easy to read. And it's a first step, but also I would really love to have regular conversations inside the industry in between manufacturers. I think that would be very interesting to share ideas, to share where we want to go. I know that the high-end society has done that.
That's predominantly Germany.
Yes, but it's not really open outside of Germany. But there was conversations in between manufacturers, distributors, retailers, journalists as well, and I think it's great. And I think it could help everybody moving forward. You know what? Sometimes I have the feeling that a part of our industry, and this we touch again what you said in the introduction, like boomers are essentially our customers now, and they are getting older, and the industry is shrinking and all that. So what do we do? Are we just waiting for the industry to disappear, or are we moving forward, creating something new, and trying to be getting better and creative? So that's my point here. Obviously, if everybody is trying by themselves on on in their corners, maybe we'll be able to do something. But I think that if we regroup in around some terms, we could create something great.
So, and here's a question for you. And obviously, SoundStage is a publication. We're the media and all of that. But what you're describing, I could see there being kind of a justification for the media actually taking on some of that role, where when publications measure something or review something, they list a set amount of reviews that are done in a standardized way, so that even because to your point, like not all the manufacturers and some of the smaller manufacturers might in theory adhere to a standard, but they might not be part of a body or an organization or anything like that. But the publications and the people that are reviewing it, like there's there's so much out there that's getting reviewed. Having people that are doing those reviews kind of adhere to a little bit more of a standard, kind of like ISA in a sense that there's prescribed things and stuff like that. So do you see
absolutely.
the media's
Absolutely.
need in that as well?
I'm not part of the media, so I will, refrain myself on making comments on an
Fair.
industry that I'm not part of.
Yeah.
But I think it could be beneficial for, and I would be really interesting that the media are actually part of that initiative of, creating something just greater and bigger.
Interesting.
And I think it's really interesting, and I think I'm a bit curious on understanding why there's never been, for example, just to follow up on my train of thought. So we have the Vienna show, which was previously the Munich show, which is the biggest show in the industry. It's organized by the high-end society, and they're doing a great job, and it's the biggest B2B show in our industry. Prior to that, it was CES. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
And the high-end, society is doing a great job organizing that show, but it's not a show organized by the industry.
Sure. It's
a show organized by an organization which is affiliated to the industry, but it's not organized by the industry. So at some point, in other industries, the shows regularly are organized. Basel World for the watch industry is organized by the watch industry. The EICMA for motorbikes is organized by the industry. And so are we, this is sometime that, just crossed my mind. And, there's a lot of great things in our industry, like the Munich and Vienna show. I really like that show, and it's really good. And we see all our partners. It's always a good time of the year, and it's well organized. But at the same time, it's some kind of individual initiative.
So you just had you kind of put me down this train of thought, because we went to, or I was at the CES show in 2015, I believe. So it was probably, people are telling me that was the last year where it was really viable and there was a good kind of scene, and then it tapered off from there. Do you think that not having hi-fi as predominantly showcased in CES is potentially no longer reaching a wider range or a wider audience? Because CES isn't hi-fi focused, right? It's more of that, consumer electronics show. So it's looking at the consumer electronics as a whole. So by not having hi-fi there, or not having as much, because I know some brands still go there, but not having as much, do you think that kind of doesn't showcase the hi-fi hobby in the same light that it previously did?
At the same time, the music instruments industry, they're barely not going to CES. They have the NAMM, which is a separate show. Even if they're making electronics, keyboards and amplifiers and stuff like this, which are electronics, but they have their own show because it's really dedicated. And now CES, even if it's consumer electronics show, it's mainly computer related in some ways.
Computers, TVs, cameras, even cameras.
There's
NAB.
Drones and stuff like this, and but for the more dedicated industries, I think that it's good to have our own show. This
goes to another kind of thought that I have, which is kind of what you're talking about on a higher, or like if you pull it back, is a lot about education. for the customer,
Mhm.
right? Like we're really kind of talking about the idea of like giving the customer something that allows them to know right off the bat that this is a set quality or a set price, and then showing them that in a way that they can understand and begin that curiosity and kind of learn from there. One of the things that Simaudio has done before is kind of these partnerships. So the one that I'm thinking of is the Baumgartner restoration,
Yes.
and it that was kind of an interesting one because it's tapping into an audience that is arm's length at closest away from hi-fi. Like who knows how many people are into like art restoration and hi-fi, but it's starting that curiosity of this is something that's available to give you a better experience in your audio. So what other kind of like thoughts do you have on kind of educating the customer, and are these partnerships, are there other industries or other areas that you can see a connection, um or like a short path to kind of
Mm.
educating or starting the path of education for new consumers?
Mm. So it really relates to something that I have, actually analyzed lately and discussed with some of our partners. Um, the people that are buying hi-fi today, they usually, mainly, I think, have two kind of profiles. Uh, they are either music enthusiasts that are that have listened to a lot of music and at some point wanted to enhance their music listening experience
Hmm.
and then look up on how they could do that, discovered hi-fi, and then eventually bought a hi-fi system. This is exactly my case. Okay. The second group of people, um, they were educated by someone uh, in their environment, either their father, an uncle, a friend of the family. And at some point, someone showed them their first and made them discover hi-fi through a first experience.
Hmm.
And this is a common story that I hear a lot. If you go to hi-fi shows and you discuss with people, they often have that story of, oh yeah, my uncle had that, Macintosh Quad, Marantz amplifier, and when I was 8, I was going to his basement with him, and we were listening to a record, and that was a great experience and really marked me. And I always told myself that later I would buy myself a hi-fi system to enjoy my music because
Yeah.
they had that mind-opening experience. And obviously, in the later days, um, there are less people, and especially in the 90s and beginning of 2000, people were less investing in hi-fi system and big hi-fi systems, and so there was less people with living that experience,
Yeah. So less to
having their
share that
mind
experience.
exactly,
Yeah.
having their mind opened by someone else, and then eventually telling themselves that one day I'll buy a hi-fi system. So, as a manufacturer and person from the industry, our responsibility is also to open their mind and show them that there's, how could I say, using a Bluetooth speaker is not a fatality.
Yeah.
And there's another way.
Yeah.
And there's there's a greener countryside somewhere else. And yeah, this is our responsibility by uh, engaging them on socials, on the internet, through other channels than the regular channels, Also engaging with them at shows, at store events, all that, and having an open conversation. And I think this is very, very, very important. We cannot be snob.
Yeah.
We have to be nice and fun, because if you want to attract people, and you you need to show them that what we're doing is really cool and really nice and really fun to use, and it's really enjoyable on a day-to-day basis. That's the core of what we're doing. We create product with passion for people who wants to have fun with it. So if we're not fun, obviously we will not attract people. So
I
yeah.
resonate so much with that. And there's this thing that I've been kind of like scratching my mind about, which is in today's society, there's so much pressure on people to either be like grinding, so like always working, or
Mhm.
like relaxing. So it's this like very black and white juxtaposition. It's like you grind, 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 and then you relax and you go to a spa. And I
Yeah.
think there's an element, because when I talk to people, especially in a hi-fi, and like our producer Dennis Berger talks about this, kind of like sometimes uh, you'll, and I do this too, like you'll have music on in the background, your everyday music that's just playing because you enjoy music. And then Dennis had this great saying, and I forget exactly what it was, but it's like sometimes he needs to be bathed in the music. Sometimes he just needs to turn on the song, like close his eyes and just relax and listen. And I think about that because when I kind of like put that into a category, because people like putting stuff into categories, that's not grinding. And I don't think that's considered relaxing or that spa like experience.
Mm, mm,
So
mm,
it's
mm.
almost kind of seen as lazy to a degree, where it's like, well, you're not doing anything, but you're not like you're not relaxing yourself. So I think that might actually be some element of that, where like, how do you justify sitting down and just listening to music? And I don't know. Like, I don't have an answer for that, but I feel like that's something that seems to have been lost or not as predominant in the way that people listen to music. People have music on day in, day out in their car, on a Bluetooth speaker, a terrible Bluetooth speaker, maybe in their
Yeah.
headphones when they're walking to the train or whatnot. But that experience doesn't seem to be as predominant, where people just kind of sit back and kind of play music and maybe dim the lights and have a beverage of their choice or whatever it may be. But that's kind of something that I've been thinking about, where I don't know, like maybe do your customers, like, do you see that? Do people still have that experience, or is it
A
kind of
lot,
this
a
background
lot.
music?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. People are, and this is really relates to your subject of the hi-fi future, and where it's going. Um, and it also relates to how we develop our product and how we imagine, the future of hi-fi. In the past, people had their hi-fi system in the basement or in a dedicated room.
Hmm.
That was a full experience. Nowadays, and I talk for our products, 99% of our customers, they have their system in their living room,
Yeah.
because they use it as obviously a hi-fi system when they want to listen to some music, focus on it and all that. But at the same time, they also use it finally as they would use a Bluetooth speaker. They use
Yeah.
it when they watch the TV. Their kids are using it. And, most of our customers are men, so their wife are using it. And sometimes people are asking us, why do you bother putting, Bluetooth, AirPlay, all that in your machines? And this is exactly why. Or HDMI connection with ARC.
Yeah.
Because a good part of the time, our hi-fi systems are used on a day-to-day usage, which is not high fidelity usage. But these people, when they want to carefully listen to their music, they then use the hi-fi system and the Moon products to their full potentials, and enjoy what they have at home. And this is something we always keep in mind, and this is why we have developed the network player amplifier, the 371, the whole North collection, which is high-end but with less boxes, top performance, a lot of features, less cable, less boxes, to be able to integrate in nice interior designs. So this is really a mentality that we have right now. And there's also a trend that we see, and one of my colleagues showed me that the other day. There's really a group of the younger generation, so Gen Z and even younger than that. And this is a trend that you can find on Instagram, the no connection rooms.
No connection rooms? I've never heard of this.
No connection rooms, yeah. So in their house, they have a room where they forbid phones to enter.
Ooh.
So in this room, they have real books, they have analog hi-fi systems.
Oh.
They have art, and this is a rule they make themselves for themselves, that they leave their phone out in order to have something that will nourish their mind the proper way, with a real book, taking the time to think about things, listening to some music, meditate, doing some yoga, for example, and there's nothing connected in that room. So no streamer, music is only analog or CDs.
Yeah. So I really like that idea. So my wife and I have this thing, like, we don't have a TV in our bedroom. We don't have there's in any of the kids' bedrooms or anything like that. We have a dedicated TV room and all that.
Yeah.
My wife is much better at it than I am. Like, she literally puts her phone, not even just on like silent mode. She like disables the network connectivity and all of that. She puts it in airplane mode to sleep. I'm not that. I like getting notifications and phone calls if needed or whatever. But I like that idea, because it's kind of giving yourself permission to do something that, I mean, it is therapeutic, but it's not kind of what I would say is projected as the therapy that people are kind of raving about, the idea of like going to a spa or whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's therapeutic in a different way.
Yeah, but nowadays, even if when you're doing some yoga or whatever, you have your phone with you, showing what kind of exercises you need to do and what kind of position you need to take. Even when you run outside, you have your music with your AirPods or headphones. You have your phone in your pocket. You have your connected watch that gives you your pace and, all that. So you're always connected. And at some point, you can be disturbed by, a lot of things. So removing all those things from yourself and focusing on something that is essential, but only one thing at a time, I think it's very cool and very powerful. And I think also it's really linked to what we're doing. We're not doing all that development of technologies and all the passion we put in creating the Moon units and making them in Montreal, putting a lot, spending I don't know, many hours of listening sessions, fine-tuning the models, the prototypes and all that, for the people to watch their phone while they're listening their hi-fi. So Obviously, we would like them to fully enjoy what we've created and benefit from the full potential of those units. But we also understand that it's 2026 and that we need to integrate some features to be able to make their life easier and being able to connect to their phones and all that. But when the music starts, we would like them to, put the phone down and just enjoy the music.
I love it. I think that's a really good kind of way to kind of wrap and transition. You've been super generous with your time, so thank you so much. You know this question. You know that I'm going to ask you about music, but we've already kind of gone through a lot of your favorites and all that. Is there anything recently, the last couple months since we last talked, that you've listened to that you want to shout out?
Oh yeah, and I prepared that question.
You learned.
Yes, I knew it was coming, and obviously, I shared many things that I like and all that. But I really want to put the Quebec forward.
Okay.
And lately, we had a band coming from north of Quebec that it's called Angine de Poitrine. And
we're going to need spelling on that for me to add to the show notes.
So, Angine de Poitrine, Angine space DE space POITRINE. Angine de Poitrine. So, it's very French words. They are coming from Quebec. They are a duo. They are everywhere on the internet at the moment.
Okay.
So it's a drummer and it's a guitarist, but the guitarist has a very unique instrument, which is a bass and a guitar in one instrument. And there are microtonal bass and microtonal guitars. So they have frets that are divided in a quarter of the tone instead of one tone. Okay?
That sounds wild.
This is crazy. So the guy creates buckles of sounds with his bass and his guitars, and they play on top of it. When I tell you that they are everywhere, everybody that loves prog rock, if you like Dream Theater, all those kind of bands, and even something that it's more unique like Primus, for example, you will love Angine de Poitrine. This is really amazing. This is really refreshing. This is really rock. And because they are from Quebec, I'm super happy to share that with your audience. And I'm also super proud of all the creativity we have in Quebec and everything we can export as music uniqueness.
I love it. I actually just found them on Spotify, so I just put a bunch of their stuff into my list, so I'm going to listen to them right after this.
Yeah, and they have costumes. Like in interviews, they are not speaking; they are making noises. So they are really, really weird, but I love them. I love them.
Oh, that is awesome, Étienne. Thank you so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it. Fantastic conversation,
always a pleasure.
As always. And we're gonna do this again. Hopefully, not
absolutely, because we could talk about the industry of hi-fi and the future of hi-fi for hours. And maybe next time we could be 2 or 3 manufacturers around the table and having a group conversation.
I love that idea. That's a good idea. Dennis is probably taking notes right now. So we'll circle back. Thank you, Étienne.
Cool. With pleasure, Jorden.